Hello, everybody, and good morning. My name is Aileen Deasy, and I'm a manager on the Enterprise Supports team. I am delighted to welcome all of the IHF members here today to have a demonstration of the carbon calculator and how it works. And I will also be explaining about the next steps about how we will support you. And we're delighted so many people have tuned in today because we know this is one of the greatest challenges facing us. So we're delighted to see so many people on our webinar today. I'm also delighted to welcome our experts from EarthCheck, who are an internationally recognized leader in certification. And I will introduce both Nigel and Cameron in a moment. But I'll firstly just take you quickly through our agenda and what we're going to cover today. So basically, the lads from EarthCheck are going to take us through the benefits for hospitality businesses in using the carbon calculator, otherwise known as the Climate Toolkit for Business. So we will refer to it as the carbon calculator. We will take you through how to prepare for it, which I think is a really important part of this, and then how to use the calculator and what it gives you at the end, which is your action plan. So today is a live demo about how that calculator works and what's in that action plan. So I want to just explain about the support that Fall to Ireland will give afterwards. So if you want to avail of our support, then you will have to actually complete this calculator and get your action plan. And we will be sharing today in the chat a link to sign up for our support. So it literally just takes a couple of seconds. It's just your name and your contact details. And once you sign up to that, we will swing back in the next little while, and we will, once you have your calculator and your action plan done, we will come and contact you where you can share your plan with us, and that will get you access to our supports for you and your team. So that's what's on today. We will have a live demo of the calculator as well as a Q&A session at the end. So please give us your questions because, you know, this is what really helps other people as well once everybody's asking plenty questions. So moving on now to our two experts. So we have Cameron and Nigel. So Nigel is EarthCheck's General Manager in consulting. He has over 25 years program management, research and development, and stakeholder management experience in the tourism and economic development sectors. Welcome, Nigel. And we also have Cameron, who specializes in consulting and advisory for sustainable tourism and has developed a deep understanding of decarbonisation, as well as becoming an expert in corporate sustainability via ESG. So over to you guys, and I'll see you later for the Q&A.
Thanks, Aileen. Pleasure to be able to talk to everyone this morning. I'd like to start with a little bit of background about why as businesses you should be interested in your business's carbon footprint. A little bit of background. Starting with terminology, look, we're aware there's a lot of phrases flying about. We've got three here just to give you a little bit of background. Carbon footprint, you hopefully you've heard of that. Very straightforward. It's the amount of greenhouse gases produced to or indirectly support a business's or a person's activities. You usually hear it expressed as tons of CO2 per year. That's the most common way of describing it. So carbon footprint in that sense. Other two phrases that are quite similar, carbon neutral versus net zero. The truth is they're very similar. According to all of the academic bodies, you should really regard them the same concept. It's really about balance. It's about balancing the emissions that are put into the atmosphere versus those pulled out. So whether you're describing it as carbon neutral or net zero, it means more or less that same thing, balance. And the phrase decarbonisation, that's the process of taking greenhouse gases, CO2 as we collectively describe it, out of processes or out of your business emissions. So there's a little bit of background. I think we're aware that terminology is one of those things that causes a little bit of confusion in the sector. So what's changing? Something very obvious for you as businesses, the costs of doing business. We're aware those are increasing rapidly. The cost of supplies, the cost of energy, cost of staff. So there's a straightforward thing there that's related to the efficiency of your business. Something else that's changing is consumer demand is changing quickly. Visitors' understanding of climate change and their expectations of sustainable operations. Yeah, that's changing quickly. The The letters ESG, whether we describe it as corporate social responsibility or businesses reporting on their environmental, social, and corporate governance. If you're a larger business, you've got shareholders, you're listed, you've got a board of directors who are seriously interested in this. This is going to drive change quite radically, your commitments and obligations and reporting in that sense. So those are three areas that we're seeing some change and sort of accelerating the interest in efficiency and decarbonisation. As I said earlier, the cost of doing business, it's a very obvious concept. Diagram on the right that you'll be familiar with raising energy prices. I guess where this relates to the calculator is straightforward. It's about resource efficiency starts with an understanding of how much you're using, whether that's water, energy, waste, where the calculator assists is the first step, and actually being able to note, being able to list, being able to benchmark what you're doing and how that contributes to your carbon footprint. So I think it's something that is very straightforward and linked to the cost of doing business. It's about measurement and working out where you are to start with. You can't really take those management actions and reduce that impact and reduce the cost until you have that initial benchmark. In terms of consumer focus, I think we, as I said in the previous slide, consumers are changing quickly, expectations are changing quickly, but we're equally aware that visitors' time is precious when they take their holiday. So even though CO2, carbon emissions, net zero is a bit of a holy grail, visitors can't see and feel that. So it can seem secondary to visitors once they're with you. But what do they see? They see great experience. They see the supply chains and the local suppliers that they're using. They see great landscapes and environments. They see if there's litter or those that aren't quite how they could be. They touch and feel welcoming communities. So I suppose even though we're talking about CO2, we're talking about carbon footprint today, I think those softer things that go alongside that are important in terms of the experience that you offer. Those are the things that visitors actually see when carbon in the atmosphere is having an impact. So I think there's a broader background to explain there as well. So benefits of using the toolkit. As this is a little bit of lead into Cam describing the toolkit and running through a demo with you. So first and foremost, it's an easy to use toolkit. Designed for all businesses, but what we've been doing is working with DETI, who are producing it for government to make it appropriate for use by the tourism industry, by guest houses and by hotels. So a straightforward, easy to use tool. When you complete the tool, it gives you an automated, robust action plan for your property that's dependent partially on the answers that you put in to the toolkit. So you'll see that when we run through the demo. And points 3 and 4 on the screen that you see at the moment, support's going to be available from Vulture to help you complete the calculator if you need that, and then support to help you along the way in terms of the next steps and actions that you take from that. So I think running through that again, an easy to use tool, a plan that's prepared, automated at the end of that tool that give you some suggested actions for the actions you can take to reduce your footprint, and support's available to help you through that process and what you might do next from that. The fifth point, which is on the next screen, really related to the screen earlier about cost of doing business. What you're really doing when you're putting your data into the tool is helping form that baseline. So you give yourself a benchmark from which you measure against. One of the things that we're adding to the tool that isn't there at the moment is we're adding benchmark information at the end of it that allows you to compare like with like. So if your guest house generates 500 kilos of carbon, as well as being able to compare your own performance year on year, what it will also do when we add this information is allow you to compare with peer group properties elsewhere in terms of how you're performing relative to the average. What we'll do there is present that information per guest night, so that you're able to compare like with other hotels and other B&Bs and other guest houses. So that's coming in the next month or so, hopefully, added to the tool. So the other benefits really is an ask to industry. What we're looking at is using the calculator as a way of a repository for information from Irish businesses, which help us create a pool of information, which will be the basis for future action by Vulture and other government agencies. So it's really a request to you in the sense that we want your data and to actually add to that anonymized pool of information. This information can only come from one place. The footprint of businesses can only come from you as businesses. So we really appreciate those businesses that are taking the time to do that. It's important for us because it helps us looking at that collective set of data, where we can actually make a difference, where investment is needed to actually help properties adapt their property and support that climate change process. So your efforts in taking part and contributing to that overall pool of data are really important. And yeah, just making the point, the first step in this process really is about measurement. I think, as we said, it's a national objective that we understand the footprint of Irish tourism, but that can only come from individual businesses contributing their data. So step one in that bigger process of decarbonisation, it's understanding the scale of that footprint. Your business has a part in that. That's step one in that process. And then as we go through that process of how to lower emissions, once we get through step one, we know what the scale of activity is and what the impact is. Once we have that, step two, we can start to decarbonise, which means setting and deliver science-based targets for emissions reductions. So it's all about real numbers, not guesswork, real things that you're generating through your business, through water, through energy, through waste, through transport. Step three is regeneration. Looking to how we actually invest that to actually make a difference in regenerating natural ecosystems. And that collective information in step four allows us to collaborate and to finance change. Because the investing in systems, whether it be heating, whether it be cooling, whether it be other systems that bring about change, those are expensive. So I think it's that collective information that allows us to collaborate and finance change. So that's a little bit of background in terms of what the tool is, what we see the benefits as. At this stage, I'm going to hand over to Cam to take you through a description of the tool and a demo of the system so you can see how it works. Cam, over to you.
Thank you, Nigel. That was great. So yeah, that gives you a little bit of background about why we're all here today, and thank you to everyone for joining us. We're super excited about what has been developed for Irish tourism, and we just kind of want to give you a taste of it so that you feel comfortable using it and applying it to your own business. So just to jump in, we've actually been able to trial this a bit with some existing Irish businesses of varying sizes, varying industries, and we've gotten some feedback so far. So one of the first things is, where do I start with sustainability? It's such a big thing to talk about, and I could not agree more. It is definitely an iceberg. There's so much more under the water than on the surface, but that's fine. You should take it in bite-sized pieces, take it as it comes. View the calculator as a way to take that first step and get the first experience with sustainability, if that's the case for your organization. How do I measure my impact? Again, that can be very complex for certain organizations, but for everyone on the call today, the calculator will show you exactly where the priorities should lie, and that is figuring out where across your business operations are there carbon emissions being generated. Some of you maybe have a very clear picture of that. Others of you I've never thought about it before. This is the very first opportunity you're having to kind of learn more about that for your business. What can you do to help? As Nigel just mentioned, this is something that not only benefits each of your individual businesses, but Irish tourism as a whole, as an industry. So being a part of that measurement to get a complete picture of the carbon emissions of the industry, that is what you can do to help. That is a great first step. There's a lot of things to go down the pipe, but hey, just get started with getting that baseline measurement. How do I communicate what I'm doing with my guests? We'll touch on that a bit later, but there are interesting ways to use the information as it applies to your business on how you're communicating with your customers. As I'm sure you're all aware, you want to be accurate and transparent on that, avoid kind of the buzzword of greenwashing. So we'll touch on that in a moment. And then how do I involve my staff? That's a great question, and at the very end of the calculator, there's actually a lot of tools that show you how to bring all of your staff and employees along the journey to kind of embedding these things across your business. So first things first, I want to jump into the calculator itself and actually show you what the web page looks like. So as you can see, when you type in the link, it takes you to the landing page here, and you'll notice some information to put in at the beginning. But the very first thing I want everyone to do when you first land is go right up here to login. As that loads, you're going to click the registration button. And as you can see, there's just a few pieces of information to add, mainly a contact name, whose company is represented, an email address, and then to actually make a password for your login. This is very, very important because this ties the data that you input into being able to communicate back to your business. It also identifies to the Irish government that your business has taken part in this. So when you have the action plan at the end, this will be actually tied to your organization, not just, you know, an anonymous user. So if you don't register, you're still able to use the calculator, but it won't be tied to any data that's tracked, so that it really won't be that extra help to the entire industry to get a baseline footprint of the whole industry. So it just takes a moment to get registered. Once you do, then you're good to go. So we can go back to the landing page, and you'll see the very first thing you want to do is just to kind of identify for your organization what best suits you. So for everyone on this call, we're going to go to hospitality and leisure as your sector, select that. How many people currently work for your business? So this is both employees and contractors, however that may be structured for your organization. You can just put in a number that applies to your business. And then, does your company actually own the premises or the property, or are you renting or leasing? Yes or no there. So that's it. That kicks off the calculator. From there on, it's asking for information on how your business actually is creating emissions, and it asks for different categories there. So I just want to take a step back and kind of give the context for why the calculator is being put forward to businesses right now. As Nigel mentioned, a lot of this is about getting that first snapshot picture, getting a better understanding of what the carbon footprint of the entire Irish tourism industry is, and that happens at the individual property level. So it's a kind of a two birds with one stone approach. By collecting your information on your carbon footprint for your business, it's contributing to the larger industry as well. So you're getting a picture of your business while also contributing to the larger thing. Getting that understanding is critical so that decision-making moving forward is based on real-world data. That is what we want. We want science-based decisions being made for the industry. How do we go about that? Measurement, of course. So we've created a calculator that applies specifically to your industry, is very user-friendly, very easy and quick to use once you're actually in the toolkit itself. And best of all, it's not just a one-stop and that's it, and you're left high and dry. Based on the inputs of the calculator, as well as some guidance from experts, there's an actual action plan produced for your organization to give you next steps. Okay, I've collected this data, I've gone through your toolkit, now what? Well, there you go. You've got some steps that you can approach, and they're built for organizations on a wide spectrum, whether this is your first go of it, or if you have a lot of experience and you're really looking for the next step to develop your strategy. All those things are covered in the calculator. So before you actually get in there, I always recommend taking time to prepare. It makes it so much easier to actually go through the process if you've prepared before you sit down to undertake the calculator. So the first thing to do is select someone in the organization who's the champion, who's the responsible party for entering the data. That person also needs to have access to a wide array of organizational information. As we mentioned, you have to know the number of employees, the status of ownership and leasing of the properties, as well as access to a number of invoices across multiple utility information, which we'll get to. So this person doesn't necessarily need to be a low-level staff unless that's who's empowered in your organization. Make sure it's somebody who will have access to it and be able to quickly gather all the required information. Now, what information do you need? Firstly, you need to know about the ownership and leasing status of buildings, number of employees, including any contractors that work for the organization, your total energy use for a calendar year, the total road and air travel of your business for a calendar year, the total waste produced in multiple different streams, and the water use. All of these for a 12-month rolling average. 12 consecutive months. The most common places you'll find these are in invoices and bills to contractors and utilities. That's where a lot of this information comes from, and as we get into the data inputs, you'll see how that lines up. One thing before we jump in, I just want to warn you, I'll mention it throughout. All of this information needs to be put in the right units. So It's all highlighted in the calculator, letting you know what it's being asked for, but just be aware. For instance, waste is for the calculators measured in kilograms. Make sure that yours isn't collected in tons, or if it is, make sure that there is a clarity on that and you're not putting in the wrong units into the calculator. All right, let's take a look. For beginners, I really think you should allow several hours to go through and get all the information, whether that's all centrally located and you can just go and access it all at once, or you're having to chase down multiple departments. Depends on the business, of course. So if this is your first go, you've never had a effort to collect this information, give yourself some time. Don't expect it to take 15 minutes to be able to wrangle up 12 months worth of invoices if they're covered by different operations within the business. If this is something that you're more than comfortable with, and all you need to do is make sure that you have the data for 12 consecutive months, a half hour should be fine. So really this is about setting the expectation on what the preparation looks like. And as you get more comfortable with it, it does get easier over time. Hopefully after you've gone about the collection of data into a single source to use the calculator, that can then be continued on into the future so that you know where that single source of data is moving forward. Okay, as we said before, we start with some business information. This is really to set the expectation for where your data fits within the wider, broader Irish economy. You are in the hospitality and leisure sector. That puts some expectation and some boundaries on what kind of the ranges of carbon emissions we should expect. The size of your business really helps to give a normalization. So, if yours is a family-run business with less than 10 employees, you're going to be expected to have different outcomes than a company with 100 employees and the relative sizes of those businesses. Same thing applies with ownership and leasing. Certain aspects of the action plan at the end is easier if you own the property versus having to do things on a property that is not under your ownership. All of those things are accounted for here on the first page. Now, the very first step to calculating your carbon footprint is by understanding where the energy use for your business comes from. So there's 6 categories included within the calculator. The most common ones are the first 2, electricity and natural gas. As you'll see, there's a way to measure those in the kilowatt hours. Most commonly, that will be collected on invoices and utility bills. If that is not accessible to you, having the total spend, so what the cost for an entire year's energy use in those categories is a perfectly fine stand-in. And that applies to all of these. So if you use heating oil, LPG, heavy fuel oil, or coal, any of those, if you have the units they're looking for, whether that be liters or tons, if you have that information, please feel free to enter it in the calculator. If all you have is the total spend on those, perfectly fine. I will say it probably makes it a little bit better if you are consistent. So if you use costs for some, use that across the board. It just gives a little bit of consistency in the data being input. Other than that, that's really all that comes out. Oh yeah, just for clarification, kWh stands for kilowatt hours. So that's a very common way of measuring energy use in natural gas and electricity. Travel. So the second category is how many emissions come from vehicles and travel. For your vehicle travel, really what we want to talk about is business-owned vehicles. So this is not, you or your staff's commuting to work. These are any vehicles used on the site, whether those be shuttles, work vehicles, anything like that. If you have that information separated by fuel type, petrol or diesel, depending on the vehicle's usage, again, that can be input by the miles actually driven by the vehicle or the total cost spent on the fuel. Either one is acceptable. And the last one is for business flights. So this is specifically for business purposes under the organization's needs. And the designation there is between short haul, which is within the UK and EU area, or long haul, which is outside of that. And one return flight is both the way and back. So you don't have to count that as 2 separate flights. That just counts as one flight. All right, next we have materials, which is a fancy way of saying waste. So the first thing you want to do when it says intensity, Everyone on this call should select services. The only reason you would select products is if for some reason your business makes a majority of its revenue on selling goods. For the hospitality and leisure sector, this is almost certainly going to be services. So only if you fall into that rare category would you select products. Again, this lets the calculator understand where within the industries your business fits. Waste is broken down into 3 types. These should be commonly applicable across Ireland. If they don't apply to you, there is a little key. So black refers to your landfill waste going directly to landfill, not recycled or composted. Green bin is for recyclables, and brown is for food waste. So that's how you can remember it. As you'll see on the calculator, there are little information blue dots right next to it. That'll give you that same information again. There is no other waste being counted right now. So if you have an incineration or some other cardboard separated from all the recyclables is not currently tracked. So please stick to the categories available. If you have an outside category that's not contained in the calculator as currently constructed, please let us know. Give us some feedback. It's always about making it applicable to as many people as possible. So we'd love to know if that isn't capturing your reality right now. And the final one is water. It's always the easiest. It's just a simple measure of how many cubic meters were used in a year. Again, this should be available on your invoices or utility data, and 12 consecutive months of water usage. And that's it. That's all the data that we're looking for. All right, I collected it, I input it, now what? Well, now the first thing that the calculator will show you is actually a breakdown of what your total carbon footprint is. So you get the immediate payoff. I did the hard work. Now what do I get? So just an example, this shows at the bottom of the total tons of CO2 that your business would have used in the previous 12 months, if that's the 12-month consecutive that you used for your data sources, as well as breaking it down amongst those different categories. So you'll be able to see where the most emissions are coming from your business, whether they're from energy use or the waste that you're producing or travel. It can differ. So it's across accommodations, whether they're hotels or guest houses or things like that, there won't be a lot of deviation. A lot of it is going to come from energy usage, but you'll be able to see if your business falls within that category. And it really gives you an idea of if you were to say, okay, I have an understanding of my carbon footprint. How do I go about lowering it? Well, now we know where those emissions are coming from. So you can dedicate resources where they're best suited and not kind of, flounder about on a smorgasbord approach. You can be more tactical with it. And on that note, there's an action plan. So in addition to getting a carbon footprint calculation for your business, there's also a dedicated action plan which breaks down certain steps that can be used to take the information you've just gained and use it to improve the sustainability of your business. And these are broken down into 3 main categories, depending on how experienced you are. So if this is your first go, the get started actions, they're the first steps you can do. As we mentioned before, getting your employees and the whole team on board. This gives you some ideas to help advance that cause. If you've done this before, or you've put your toe in the waters of sustainability and you've tried some initiatives, you just want more ideas and better understanding, the embed are the best actions for you. They'll help give you ideas about actually implementing actions across the business, not just about understanding. And finally, if you are a bit advanced, if you kind of want this to build into the identity of your business, the strategic are probably the best for you. They're going to show you ways on the path forward that you can actually start to make an impact on your sustainability, whether that's lowering your carbon emissions or achieving actual measurable outcomes from the actions that are being input. And each one of these actually has a little icon which shows what it's related to. So whether it's one of the actual categories of energy, water, waste, or travel, or it's some other action, which, as Nigel was mentioning, there's a lot of different benefits to using the calculator, whether that's improved efficiency, whether that's cost savings, whether that's collecting partnerships and getting broad support for your business. All of these things can be beneficial from the calculator, and that comes in the way of these action plans designed for your business. All right, So that's it. We've gone through the entire calculator. We now know where to find the information, where to go to access the calculator, how to input it, and then what we get out of the end of it. So as we mentioned at the get-go, the first thing you want to do when you access the calculator is to register your business. That way we know it's you who's done it. We know that it's you that's gotten the action plan and are contributing your part to this effort. On the screen right now, you'll see a QR code. So if you have your smartphone, you can just snap a picture of that. It'll take you straight to the Climate Toolkit registration. And it shouldn't take 30 seconds to get in there, get signed up, and then you've got access to that. It'll actually send you a confirmation email so you can just at a later time open up that email. It'll let you log in, and whenever you're ready to enter in your data to the calculator, you'll be good to go. I just want to recap some of the things that Nigel mentioned previously. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits to doing this. You get a broader understanding of your organization in ways that you may not have thought of before. And you know, the industry is changing. There are a lot broader expectations, both from fellow businesses, from regulators, from the customers. They have expectations. Not everyone is well versed in this, and we know that causes a lot of anxiety. Even if you do have the best of intentions, it's not always clear on how to get started. So this calculator gives you that ability to get a picture for your business on what are we doing, how are we doing, what do we need to be focusing on. And really the very first step of that is being able to show you where there may be some inefficiencies so that you can address those and see real results in cost savings almost immediately. As we said, broadly, this does benefit the whole industry by giving us a way to establish a baseline for the whole Irish tourism industry on how the carbon emissions sit. And that only comes from you, the individual operators. And finally, you're not just left high and dry. This isn't just us asking for information from you for our benefit. This is directly back to you by giving you those action plans, which can show you exactly where you need to go from here on out. And there actually is a tax back scheme, which is tied to using the calculator, actually getting those action plans. So there are a lot of benefits that come from this. So now we're going to take some time to do a Q&A. Hey, Aileen.
Yeah. Hey, Cameron. That's great. Okay, that's super. Thanks a million, Cameron. And I suppose it is important to reiterate just the importance of gathering this data so that, I mean, to establish that baseline, it has never been done before. It's the first time it's being done for Irish tourism, and our sector, we really want to get that baseline. And the only way to get it is to start measuring. So fantastic. It also means that ourselves as Fáilte Ireland, we can start to, analyze trends and, use that to influence government and influence other agencies. So really important. We have some questions. I'm going to go straight to them. So the first question, guys, the cost of energy usage, is this inclusive of VAT and carbon taxes, etc.?
That is a good question. I would say that we're going to go with the final figure. So yes, the final invoiced amount that is on your bill, put that in for the cost of your, whether that's energy usage or any of the other ones, travel, anything like that. Just give it, really the calculator is designed to be simple for the end user. So just a single figure at the end should be applicable.
Okay. That's great, thank you. The next one is in relation to recyclables. So is this total of paper, cardboard, crushed glass, bulk frying oil, etc., or is it just paper waste?
It is inclusive of everything. So certain jurisdictions do have what's called mixed recycling, where you get to put all of it in one bin. That's what I mean by the green bin. If for some reason your property does separate it, where you're separating out paper versus glass and all the lot. If you have a way to combine that all into one figure, awesome. That's what we're looking for. The total, I believe it's kilograms of waste that is put in the recycling bin. That's what we want. So yes, it is an addition of all of those separated recycling streams.
Okay, super. I'll keep going. So what is a realistic initial percentage target for reduction of carbon footprint? There's a whopper of a question.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
Nice. Do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I can probably take that one and not give the questioner an answer. I think it's very difficult. Really, it's totally dependent on the processes that you undertake as a business. I suppose the truth is, if you're quite inefficient, progress will be very easy and you'll be able to make a big change. If you're already quite efficient as a business, you use renewables, do all of the stuff about cavity wall insulation or energy efficient, do local supplying, or careful with your separation of waste, and in that way it'll be a slower progress. So, but I think the answer to the question there is I can't give you an average, but I think it really is dependent per business. When we add the benchmark information to the toolkit, what we can do is give a tip given on the average of what we know businesses do. We can give you an average of how it goes, but I think don't pay too much attention. It really is unique to your business, unique to your premises, unique to the heating and cooling systems that you use. So I think it's really about benchmarking. What you will be able to do when we add benchmarks for your sector is see how you compare like with your peer group of businesses. So I think that's probably the best addition we can make.
Okay,
if I could just add one thing. I love that idea. You're already on to the next step, which is, all right, I've got my carbon footprint. How do I lower it? Take it one step at a time. Measurement is a great first step. If you know what your carbon footprint is, you've already done a lot. That's a great way. Maybe measure it out for an entire year on a rolling average. And now that you have a way to track that repeatedly, use the toolkit for a whole year. You'll get ideas through the action plan on how you can get some of what Nigel was referring to. They're the low-hanging fruit by improving efficiencies, but get yourself the measurements so you have a better understanding across your organization. Decarbonization is coming. We see support being rolled out across the EU, arguably nowhere any better than Ireland. They're taking advantage of a lot of these initiatives. So there's going to continue to be support. I know Aileen's going to tell you all about that in a moment, but decarbonization is only necessary once you have that measurement at the get-go.
Okay, great. I'm going to keep going because there's lots of questions coming in here. Will the benchmark, it's kind of related, will the benchmark be in monthly or annual usage of energy, waste, etc.?
When we add the benchmark information, to make it comparable, we present it as per guest night for hotels and B&B and guest houses. So that's probably the most useful way. The alternative way it can be done is per meter squared to relate to the size of a property, but the best comparison is by per guest night. So then you can actually compare how you know, if you're a 100-bedroom hotel versus a 50, obviously you're a bigger premises, the impact will be different. But if we relate back that to per guest night, that's probably the best way of presenting it. And it'll relate to annual data. I think is probably the best way of presenting it in that sense as well.
Okay, great. And again, in relation to that, for the 12 months of data, is it best we take the 12 months of 2021?
There's really not a best 12 months. Hopefully they're consecutive. So I guess a lot of this comes to maybe we haven't gotten our last invoices for 2022, so we can't do those 12 months. It doesn't necessarily need to be a calendar year, January to December, as long as it's 12 months of any consecutive. As we've gotten some feedback previously, obviously the last 3 years have been very tumultuous. So a lot of businesses haven't been able to be in what they would call business as usual to be able to get that cycle. Pick the most recent 12 months where you have consecutive data for, whether that's a bridge between 21 and 22 or 2021. The nice thing about the calculator is that you can continually go back and use it month after month. So as more data becomes available, you can enter that into the calculator to get an updated footprint as you're able to.
Okay, great. So next question. Is there an option to enter multiple branches? For example, if we own some and rent some, how do we enter that data? Great question.
That is a great question. We have gotten some feedback on that previously, especially for larger businesses with multiple properties. As it stands right now, each property needs to have their own login. So having a separate person for each property register and enter the data, that helps us separate it out at the property level. It is something that's in the works though, because we realize that there are different businesses on different levels. So being able to streamline that is something that we're prioritizing. Nigel, did you have something there?
Yeah, look, Yeah, I think Cam said it all there. It's designed at present as a tool for individual units. So I think if you do on multiple properties which have different characteristics, buy some, rent some, the characteristics of each building will be different. I think it's best to enter those each individually. I think it's something that we'll take up with DETI, that can there be some functionality added that deals with businesses with multiple properties. So, but at the moment, it's designed really as a tool per individual property, so that you'd have to, in essence, you'll have to register and enter multiple times to register those different businesses, those different properties.
Okay, great. I'm going to keep moving because there's loads of questions coming in here. So, when entering the information into the calculator, can you save it and revisit it later?
So you will be given a link to your action plan, which has that kind of the carbon footprint broken down, as well as your action plan. You'll be able to revisit that over and over again. And when you use that link, it'll give you a way to update your data. So that's, if you do want to use it repeatedly to give updated data, that's through the link to your action plan. Again, another reason to register for the tool before using it.
Okay.
If you have the action plan and you go in without registering again, it won't be connected to your existing action plan. But upon completion, you'll be given a link that you can revisit your information, your action plan, and be able to update the data from that link.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And again, when registered, how do you access the calculator? So that's kind of related. The question is it through the trade portal? No, it's not through the trade portal, but presumably you go back, like you just said, Cameron, to access it.
Yeah, it's actually, so once you click login at the top, then registration. As soon as you register, there'll be a home button that will take you right back to the very start of the calculator. It's all within the same web page. You don't need to leave for any reason. So yeah.
Okay, great. And with the data inputting, can you input the past few years of data to see a pattern? Does the system allow this?
Not presently. So it is something that if you wanted to track individually for your business, you could do it repeatedly. So you say you go several 12 months in a row. That on your end would have to be tracked because once you update your data, the profile of your business on the calculator from the back end is updated to the most recent. So you can track that individually for your business. I think that's a great idea. You'll be able to see trends over time, especially if your business had a fluctuating pattern over the last 3 years. But as far as what we're capturing for building the carbon footprint in the industry, it's only going to be the final data that you input.
I think
Great.
it's something
Okay.
that we can go back to DETI with, because I think it's a functionality that's obviously helpful for businesses. So at the moment it's a fairly simplistic tool, but I think something that I think would be a good add-on. So that's a point we'll go back to DETI with to see what can be done on that.
Yeah, okay, and I know there's lots of discussions happening there. So just in relation to the tax back scheme, can you explain the part that's related to the tax back scheme briefly, please?
Sure. From what I've been told, and please don't, I'm not an expert on the tax back scheme, that is beyond my expertise, but part of the criteria to qualify is acknowledging that you have used the calculator and received an action plan. That's one of the criteria to qualify for the tax back scheme. More information should be available on the website when registering for the tax back scheme.
Okay, great. So if a bar and restaurant on the same premises, that I do carvery and bedrooms, what do I do here?
Well, those are all services.
Sorry, you lease the restaurant and bar on the same premises. That I do carvery and bedrooms. What can I do here?
I would honestly enter those as separate entities unless you have commingled utilities. So if, say, for the entire premises of both the restaurant and the bedrooms, you get one utility bill for energy, one for water, something like that, then I would pick where the majority of the revenue comes from. So if the bar is doing the majority of the business, enter it under the auspices of the bar. But if the accommodation is what drives the most revenue, that should give you your lean. Hopefully you have separate utilities for the separate businesses. That would allow you to enter the information separately and get a little bit more accurate details on what's the carbon footprint of your accommodation versus the restaurant. But really that's a kind of a unique case. So we'd be happy to support you in the future on figuring that out for your business. But that was my top of mind advice for that one.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. So there's a few again about recycling. Okay, so when it comes to recycling, invoices tend to state the number of bins, for example, 8 by 240 litre bins. Is there, or do you know, what is the average weight of a full bin?
No, I don't, and that's actually an issue that we're trying to tackle.
Okay.
So as of right now, waste is measured in kilograms for the calculator. If your waste is measured in liters, and especially if it's kind of inexact in that measurement, just leave it blank for the time being. We're hoping to build out that capability in the future.
Okay, great. And again, in relation to glass, there's a few questions here. Do you calculate glass recycling? Do we count glass in the black bin?
Glass should be considered a recyclable if it is going to a recycling facility. So if you do not know where your glass goes and it's mixed with your general waste, it's probably best to assume that it's landfill, in which case you would count it for a black bin. If it is separated and someone collects your glass specifically to be recycled, then that total should be added to any other recyclables you have under the green bin.
Okay, great. Now there's a good question here. So if you're signed up to, a particular certification body or business where you're already calculating your carbon, is there any benefit to also registering to the Climate Toolkit for Business? Because as we know, a lot of businesses might have used other calculators. So if you could just explain the benefit of coming to this one, that would be great.
Absolutely. I would hope that you could use your expertise to help us out with the calculator, because what we're trying to achieve is getting a complete picture of the Irish tourism carbon footprint. And if you have already undergone this through another scheme, then you should have a lot of expertise, hopefully easy to access data that you can do very, very quickly. By contributing to the calculator, you're not only giving us a broader picture of the industry with more individual property data, but additionally, going through the process, getting the action plan, you qualify for the tax back scheme. So there are a few benefits to your business, but you're really helping out Falcha with trying to bring the industry along and get as many of those benefits for the whole industry as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's,
by using the toolkit, you have your action plan at the end, so that might add a little bit of value to what you're doing with another company. Mm-hmm. If you're in a certification scheme and it doesn't have a carbon calculator, this will give you something extra. It gives you an estimate of what your water, energy, waste usage will mean in terms of a carbon footprint. But as Cam said, we would love you to contribute to the national effort and getting an understanding of the footprint of Irish tourism. But this in itself gives business support at the end of it, so I think we have value in that. And if you've done the work, and with the hard work here is collating the bills and the information, it's a 10-minute job to input that data. So it's I would hope it's not a huge duplication. The real challenge is actually collating all of your bills together to understand those inputs in the first place. That's where the heavy lifting takes part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. There's a question here for Falcha Ireland about water saving support. Will there be supports like subsidising flow restrictions and low flow shower heads in the near future? I haven't heard that there will be, but I can certainly come back on that one.
I think Aileen, on that, what I'd say generally is the information that you're putting into this as a business, that will give Falcha the ability to make the case for investment. So that's not a promise on water, but I think generally if we're able to see from the anonymous information that goes into this toolkit about what the challenges are for business and where they need help to be more efficient, I think that gives us the ability to lobby on the industry's behalf. So I think the information at least gives us we can create the case by seeing where the challenges are.
Absolutely, and that's entirely the case that, collectively we can use this information to approach government and other agencies with the potential if we can figure out what the potential savings can be or the potential carbon reduction, it gives us a great case to go to the likes of well, government and other agencies, SCAI, Energy, Irish Water and the likes, to say, you know, if we have this data now, and we can lobby for a case to be made for extra and more funding for this sector. So again, we're nearly coming to the end. So can you repeat the part about entering data on recycled material? Do we enter the data of all recycled materials calculated together, or just mixed packaging? So is it paper and cardboard plus mixed packaging, or just mixed packaging? Sorry if that's a bit confusing. I can repeat it if necessary.
It's all of them. So if any waste from your business is going to be recycled, whether that's mixed, single stream via cardboard or glass, adding all of those totals of the recycled waste into one figure in kilograms, entering that into the calculator under the green bin, that's how we get the recyclables.
Okay,
hopefully that phrasing is a little clearer.
Okay, and I know we just have a few more minutes left, so if there's any further questions, please put them in. Let's just have a quick, there's one last one here on carbon offsetting. Is there a way to input carbon offsetting like tree planting?
As of now, no. And realistically, that would be separate from the carbon footprint that's being captured here. So when we're looking for this carbon footprint, we're really focusing on scopes 1 and 2. These are the emissions that come directly from your business. When we're talking about offsets, it's actually kind of a different calculation. So it's trying to reduce that carbon footprint. That's great if your business has already gone through the process of measuring out your carbon and chosen to pursue carbon offsets. This toolkit is really about just establishing that carbon footprint through inputting where the emissions are coming from. So that right now we're not worried about if your business is offsetting, we just want to know what the total carbon footprint is.
That is super. I think we've actually come to the end of our questions. So, of course, if there are any further questions, we always are contactable. I just want to reiterate the importance of you being part of the gathering of this baseline data, because it will only ever be used as a collective. We will, be able to analyze trends, and it will also help us to shape our plans as well as influence government and other agencies. So what our ask is today is to sign up to our support. So you will be getting a link there in the chat. It only takes a couple of minutes. Based on that, we will swing back and contact you over the next while. And you will have your action plan, your carbon calculated, and your action plan at that point. And from there on, we will support you with that action plan. So we will be sharing a copy of the recording of today's webinar and the relevant links right after the webinar. We are now putting a poll on screen. So again, this is just part of our feedback to make sure that we are bringing you, the best webinars that we possibly can. And I guess at this point, I'd like to thank Nigel and Cameron for your great expertise in this matter. It's been great to have the experts on board with us. I'd also like to thank my own team, Colette, Marion, Mairead, who are here back of house, and my whole team in Enterprise Sports. And we really look forward to working with you over the coming weeks and months. So on that note, I'd just like to say thanks again. We really look forward to working with everybody. And if you wouldn't mind just clicking the button there on the screen, that would be super. And don't forget to sign up to the supports. And that will give us the go ahead then to circle back to you guys over the coming weeks. So I think that's it for us for now. We'll see you all again soon. Take care out there, and slán agus banna.